Okay, time to catch up. We've been keeping track on RFK Jr. and on the whole MAHA situation, making America healthy again. And, I don't pay attention to it all the time, but every once in a while, I want to know what's going on. And I'm going to assume that that's the same for most of you, because although this seems like some political Washington thing, and it is, it's also very important, and it can affect each one of us individually. It can affect our families ultimately. So this is important stuff. And there's also a food fight going on. And if you enjoy a good food fight like I do, if you enjoy a good episode of The Real Housewives, then you're going to love what's been happening with the Make America Healthy Again movement. So I wanted to go over that as well. The impetus, at least the immediate impetus right now, is the latest, which is that there was a congressional hearing, not a Senate hearing, actually. And the hearing specifically was from a particular committee called the HELP Committee. Now, the HELP Committee, that might be wishful thinking, but it's actually an acronym that means Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. So remember, the Senate has an oversight duty and responsibility. And this particular Senate committee is headed up by a medical doctor. His name is Bill Cassidy. He's a Republican from Louisiana. So he understands a lot of what's going on. He has been supportive of Kennedy in the past, but that seems to be changing a little bit. And in fact, a lot of Kennedy's goodwill seems to be going by the wayside, which makes this interesting. Remember, Kennedy is a fascinating dude. And I have discussed him in the past. This is going to be like the fifth time that I'm making a recording speaking specifically about Kennedy and MAHA. And it's because, in part, he's such a compelling figure. On the one hand, he really has an interest in public health. He has a demonstrated interest. He doesn't just talk about it. On the other hand, he is a bit, perhaps, nuts. Uh, he's bright, he's talented, but he's a little nutty. And that plays into the picture. And part of the drama that we are seeing here, and part of why it makes it interesting, is because we want to know to what degree is that nuttiness going to interfere with his job duties? Or is it going to upset Congress or the American public? And this is what makes it kind of fun. Will Bobby implode and bring HHS down with him? And a reminder, he is heading up HHS. HHS is a huge department. It has within it a bunch of agencies, including the CDC, the FDA, and it is Health and Human Services. And that's what their mandate is. Their mandate is to regulate health and human services. So how well they're doing that remains to be seen. But Bobby's whole argument is that they've been doing a shitty job for a long time. And he's got a lot of evidence for that. We all do. Because we know we pay more than any other industrialized nation, and we know that we get worse outcomes. And that's his whole argument. And he mentioned that explicitly in the Senate hearing that we're talking about. His attitude was very defensive. In fact, offensive. He went on the offense. He accused the senators of being on the payroll of Big Pharma and of operating in bad faith. And he said, what was happening was not working. And the big question here is, are we seeing an example of the establishment getting upset? Or is this because of the content of what's happening? Is he endangering public health? Are we okay with cracking a few eggs in order to make an omelet? Because the omelet that we have is no good. Or is it too much of a price to pay during whatever kind of transition that we're going to be seeing? So that, to me, is what makes it fascinating. There's a lot of tension here. Any good drama has tension in it. Okay. So this is what happened. Now, let's talk about some of what's been done, some of the reason why perhaps Senator Cassidy wanted to call this hearing in the first place. What has MAHA/Bobby been doing lately? Well, he dissolved the CDC's vaccine advisory panel, and he replaced it with members who are skeptics. They are vaccine skeptics. So some people are like, hey, it's the fox guarding the hen house now. They're concerned about that. Additionally, and kind of related, is that he canceled $500 million that was set aside for mRNA vaccine research and development. In his point of view, that kind of vaccine is still sort of experimental. He acknowledged that he believes that the mRNA vaccines that were created to help stop the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, were effective. But he thinks that there's still not enough safety involved, and he wants to investigate that. At least that's what he says. During the hearing, of course, he was pressed on this. And when I say that he accused multiple senators of bad faith, I mean, he literally said to one that you're making stuff up. He said to another that your questions are gibberish. And lastly, and most joyfully for me, because if we're going to dip into the drama, then we might as well really, go in with both feet, is that he said to Senator Raphael Warnock that he may be complicit in efforts to assassinate President Trump. Yes. Why not, Bobby? Why not accuse a senator of being involved in a criminal conspiracy to assassinate the president of the United States? Let's do it. Let's go there. Jesus. So this is what we're dealing with now, right? We have this very important subject on the one hand. On the other hand, we have this Washingtonian food fight. And there was a response to some of this behavior, and I mean within the hearing and without of the hearing, and things like calling for Kennedy's resignation were happening. Let's be a little more specific. One senator, Senator Barrasso, just called for it outright, right then and there. The head of the committee, Cassidy, warned that Kennedy's leadership will threaten long-term trust in our institutions. Like, he's basically saying you're either so out there or so incompetent that the American public is going to lose faith in these institutions. And even senators who had previously supported RFK Jr. are now expressing some concerns about his judgment, for example, and certainly his behavior and his tone. If that wasn't bad enough for Bobby, now we get into the Pity Bobby segment. There is another feud going on. This one is within his own family, and they've spoken out against him before. The Kennedy family has always been committed to public service. Say what you want about them, but they've always been committed to public service. It's part of their family ethos. All right. And thus, they've been making the loudest calls for his resignation. And specifically, I'm talking about his sister, Kerry, also his nephew, Joe III. They have specifically said that we can't afford this kind of recklessness. They're saying Uncle Bobby is too wacky. What is Thanksgiving going to be like for this family? I'm assuming that Joe and Kerry will not be getting Christmas presents this year. All right. Now, listen, you can argue and you could look at it like that's a political disagreement. But they say no, it's all about responsibility. It's about risk. That this man is endangering lives, and the fact that he's their uncle he's Joe's uncle and Kerry's brother is immaterial. It's besides the point. We can't have crazy uncle going around killing people. I have crazy uncles, but they don't have that kind of responsibility, right? So let's just go back a little bit and just a reminder of what MAHA is and what they're actually doing, because their agenda actually matters. So the core tenets of MAHA are medical freedom. They want people to be advised, to have informed consent, and be able to choose for themselves. There's a de-emphasis on mandates. There's also a de-emphasis on pharmaceutical lobbying. What do we need these people for? Using influence, trying to sway politicians to do the bidding of the pharmaceutical companies. That's not about health. That's about finance for the most part. MAHA has a focus on nutrition, specifically clean foods. Natural immunity. They want to promote natural immunity. They think it's a thing. They don't think all immunity should come from a shot. And they are interested also in holistic care. So they don't want to continue over medicating our country. Our country, as a reminder, spends about 60% of what the world in its entirety spends on vaccines. And we're, I think, 5% of the world's population. So you can see this imbalance here, right? And we're getting bad health outcomes, so there might be a connection. Okay. And the recent moves have been things like appointing vaccine hesitancy researchers to officially serve in advisory roles. They launched a task force on environmental toxins and its linked to chronic illness. And they have also revamped food safety regulations through the FDA to include things like seed oils and endocrine disruptors. Endocrine disruptors, I talk about them quite a bit with my clients, are those chemicals that interfere with the proper functioning of the endocrine or the hormonal system, the system that basically controls things in our body, along with other systems. Okay. But it's the chemical control system, I guess, is how you can phrase it and understand it. They are not fans of artificial sweeteners, and why should they be? Artificial sweeteners are no bueno. I know that is a sweeping statement. You can do your own research on that, but I think that you will agree with me once you do. Stevia is okay. So basically, their goal is not, if you give them the benefit of the doubt, if you grant them good faith, the goal is not just to be a peripheral kind of contrarian movement. It's to fully reimagine public health priorities, to increase the health of people in this country, to decrease the incidence of chronic illness, right? And to have people maybe not have to spend as much. And for us not to lose friends and family earlier than is ideal. Okay, so if we grant them good faith, nobody can argue with those positions, right? Now, there's another fascinating piece of drama here, which is RFK Jr.'s relationship with President Trump. I believe that their relationship either is still or started out as completely transactional. Bobby helped Trump get elected. Bobby has his own constituency, and it's relatively small, though not insignificant, but they are ferocious. Bobby lovers love Bobby, and they were going to vote for Bobby. Remember, he was running for president himself until he felt that he was mistreated and he didn't have a chance, and then he bowed out. And then he backed President Trump. They made a deal, essentially. Now, the deal obviously couldn't be an explicit deal, right? That's a quid pro quo, and it could be illegal, but we know what happened, right? There was an understanding. And so Trump has not distanced himself from Kennedy. Now, I had predicted that these two, having big egos, would be at each other's throats. Not necessarily, but I thought the most likely scenario was that there would be a public falling out. There would be comments traded back and forth. Bobby would probably get fired by Trump. That may still happen. But as of this point, Trump has reaffirmed that RFK Jr. is doing what needs to be done to get rid of corruption, to restore public trust, to make everyone healthier. Bobby, in fact, says that President Trump calls him a few times a week and asks if the country is healthier yet. I mean, yeah, why not? Demand results. Demand immediate results. I don't know that it's going to work that way, but why not? So, Bobby's position is, and it's shared by President Trump, is that the American people were lied to. Bobby's exposing it. He's exposing all the corruption, and he's doing something about it. And this is why. And here, let me take a moment to just go into my personal family. My mother argues with me about Bobby. She just did the other night. We were talking, and she's like, so, I'm going to impersonate her. And she's going to sound an awful lot like your mother, too. She was like, so, what do you think of your boy, Bobby? And I was like, okay, let's clarify something. He's not my boy. I said that I was rooting for him because I believe in his priorities. I also acknowledge that he's probably nuts and that things could blow up. I not only acknowledge it in conversations with my mother, I acknowledge this publicly. I've said this from the very beginning. This is like my 5th video about MAHA and Bobby. I just think it's an interesting subject and it's a relevant subject. So, and I promised that I would give updates. So I keep talking about it, and that is exactly and precisely what I said. It can be checked through the public record. All right. So that is the kind of mini battle that I'm having with my mother. She does not like him, as you could tell from my impersonation of her. She thinks he's dangerous. And some senators apparently think the same thing. A lot of people do. But Trump has been staying loyal as of now. And why might that be? Well, a cynical person would say that it's not because of shared beliefs or their close relationship. They would say it's for a few practical reasons. Number one, Bobby is a bit of a heat shield, right? He's drawing the fire right now. And let's face it, I mean, the Trump administration, or President Trump specifically, has been drawing fire over the whole Epstein conundrum. All right. So, yes, if that can be deflected a little bit, that's a good thing. Number two, Trump tends to like disruptors. Right? He's a disruptor. He appreciates disruptors. And Bobby is certainly one of those. Number three, I mean, he's a shield for Trump in another way. Because if he screws up, if public health policy tanks, if things get worse in that regard, then Trump can say, well, I let Bobby do it. After all, he's a Democrat anyway, isn't he? So, I mean, there's a lot of practical considerations here. And like I said, there is always the chance that it can blow up, but it has not happened yet. I sense also that there is a loyalty thing, and it's not a personal loyalty, it's a transactional loyalty. A deal was made, and Trump is holding up his end at the moment. And let's see what happens going forward. Now, where could it go if things turn? What is the end game here? So here are some possibilities. Well, resignation or removal of RFK Jr. Now, given what we just talked about, the fact that Trump's backing him in a strong way, then chances are it's not going to happen if that continues. Now, another point should be made about that. They do have a difference of opinion about vaccines. Trump came out the other day and he said vaccines work, period. He also is very fond of reminding people that it was his doing that got the COVID RMA vaccines through so quickly. And that's what ended the pandemic, and that saved millions of lives. And he's referred to it as his vaccine. So that is a point of pride for him, and that matters for him. So there is that difference of opinion, and we'll see if it grows. Okay. Will there be more backlash? Well, I think we can count on that. Congressional Democrats are considering a formal sanction or censure. The GOP may, withdraw even more support from him. There's talk of legal challenges and ethics investigations and looking at whether Kennedy's restructuring of agencies violated, any statutes. And mind you, I don't recall if I mentioned this, but if I didn't, I should have, that he's fired an awful lot of people and others resigned in protest. The problem with that is that there are important jobs that need to be done that can't be done when there are not people in those positions, right? If you need something inspected, for example, and there's not an inspector available. I mean, that's just a kind of a basic example, but it makes sense. Right? Bobby's position again is, well, you guys stink. You haven't been doing the job. And of course, the larger Trump administration is committed to efficiency and, lowering the budget and all of that stuff. So it kind of dovetails. All right. Now, this will all get interesting in 2026 because MAHA could be a pivot point or a litmus test in the Republican primaries for both Senate and House candidates. So we'll see if that happens. So what are we left with here? Well, right now we have a Secretary of Health who doesn't trust the agencies that he oversees. Probably most specifically the CDC. And we have a movement that could be dangerous or it could be visionary. And it depends on your particular point of view. And of course, the public health system and the public is caught in the middle of this. Of, like I said, this food fight. There's no way we're not going to get pied in the face to some degree. And we also have a president who kind of enjoys this kind of tension, right? And it seems to work for his purposes. So, love him or hate him, right now, Bobby Kennedy is part of the government. He heads up this gigantic agency, literally one of the biggest agencies in the world with a gigantic budget. So he's a conventional guy now. He's an unconventional guy in a conventional position. He's part of the system. He's used to being an outsider. And he's shaping the future of American health policy. So the question is, are we prepared for what comes next? All right. So that's pretty much it for today. I will speak to everyone I will speak to everyone next week. If there's anything that you need, please reach out and I will see you then.